Have you ever met someone who seems unusually mature for their age? Maybe they were the quiet kid in class who never caused trouble, the one teachers praised as so responsible, the friend who always seemed to understand adult problems long before everyone else did. They knew how to calm people down, solve conflicts, carry emotional weight. On the surface, that kind of maturity looks impressive, admirable even, but sometimes hidden underneath that calm, capable exterior, there's a story most people never see. Because when a child grows up too fast, it usually means something was taken away before its time. Let me show you what that really means psychologically. Imagine a typical childhood for a moment. It's messy, loud, unpredictable. Kids are supposed to be selfish sometimes, emotional, irrational. They're supposed to slam doors, ask too many questions, laugh too loudly, and occasionally cry over things adults consider trivial. That chaos is actually part of development. It's how children test boundaries, learn emotional regulation, and slowly build an identity. But when a child grows up too fast, that process gets interrupted. Instead of learning the world through play, they start learning it through responsibility. Maybe it begins with something subtle. A parent going through a difficult time, financial stress in the family, a sibling who needs extra care. Suddenly the child starts helping more. Watch they become the good one, the one who doesn't complain. Adults around them might even reward it. You're so mature for your age. You're the responsible one. You understand things better than other kids. And the child learns something powerful and dangerous at the same time. Being mature earns love. Psychologists sometimes call this parentification. It's when a child takes on emotional or practical roles that normally belong to adults. They might become the emotional support for a parent, the caretaker for siblings, the quiet stabilizer in a chaotic household. From the outside, it can look like strength. From the inside, it's often survival. Because when you're a child in an unstable environment, your brain adapts quickly. It becomes hyper-aware of moods. You learn to read the room before anyone else speaks. You notice the subtle tension in your parent's voice, the sigh that means something is wrong. Your nervous system becomes a radar, not because you want to be perceptive, but because your safety depends on it. Over time, this shapes how the brain develops. The stress response system becomes more active. The amygdala, the brain's alarm center, becomes finely tuned to emotional signals. Meanwhile, the child may suppress their own needs because expressing them feels risky or selfish. You stop asking for things. You stop causing problems. You become easy. But here's the paradox. That early maturity often creates adults who appear incredibly capable. They're the friend everyone confides in, the coworker who keeps everything organized, the partner who anticipates problems before they happen. They know how to take care of others. The question is, do they know how to take care of themselves? Let's walk through a small scene. Imagine you're 10 years old. Your parent had a rough day. Maybe they're frustrated. Maybe they're overwhelmed. And you notice the tension immediately. You lower your voice. You avoid asking for help with homework. You make yourself smaller so you don't add pressure. Now imagine repeating that pattern for years. Eventually, your brain learns a simple rule. My needs come second. Not consciously, quietly, deep in the wiring of your behavior. And the strange thing is, people might admire this trait. Society often celebrates self-sacrifice, being dependable, being the one who holds everything together. All right, but psychologically, growing up too fast often means you skipped important stages of emotional development. Not because you failed, but because you didn't have the space. Children are supposed to experiment with identity. They try different personalities like outfits. One year they're obsessed with dinosaurs, the next they want to be a magician. They argue, explore, push boundaries. But the child who grows up too fast often becomes one thing very early: responsible, reliable, predictable. Those qualities can become so central to their identity that they struggle later when life asks them a different question. Who are you when you're not taking care of everyone else? This is where adulthood gets complicated. Many adults who grew up too fast have a strange relationship with rest. Relaxing feels unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. If nothing needs fixing, their brain starts scanning for problems. Their nervous system has been trained to stay alert. Calm can feel suspicious. It's like a smoke alarm that goes off even when there's no fire. There's also often a deep sense of emotional independence. On one hand, it's empowering. These individuals know they can handle difficult situations. They've been doing it since childhood. But on the other hand, asking for help can feel unnatural. Vulnerability might feel unsafe. You become the strong one, the dependable one, and sometimes, quietly, the lonely one. But I want to pause here and say something important. Growing up too fast doesn't only create wounds, it also creates remarkable strengths. People who had to mature early often develop extraordinary empathy. They understand emotional complexity in ways others might not. They can sense subtle shifts in conversations, read between the lines, offer support when someone else is struggling. Their emotional intelligence can be profound. History is filled with individuals who faced heavy responsibilities early in life and later channeled that experience into insight, creativity, leadership. Adversity forces the brain to adapt, but adaptation always comes with trade-offs. Imagine learning to run before you ever had the chance to walk slowly. You might become very fast, very capable, but part of you missed the simple joy of exploring at your own pace. That's often the emotional story of someone who grew up too fast. As adults, they may begin rediscovering pieces of themselves that were postponed. The playful side, the curious side, the part that doesn't have to solve everything. Sometimes this rediscovery happens in small ways. Buying something purely for fun without guilt. Allowing yourself to say no without explaining. Laughing at something silly and realizing you don't always have to be the serious one. These moments might seem minor, but psychologically they're powerful. They're the mind reclaiming parts of development that were delayed. And here's something fascinating about the brain. It's incredibly adaptable, even in adulthood. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity. The brain can reorganize, form new patterns, learn new emotional responses. That means the child who grew up too fast isn't stuck in that role forever. You can learn to rest. You can learn to receive care, not just give it. You can learn that your value isn't tied only to how useful you are to others. And that realization can be life-changing. Because beneath the responsible exterior, there's still a human being who deserves curiosity, joy, and softness. Sometimes healing doesn't look dramatic. It looks like giving yourself permission to be imperfect, to not have everything figured out, to be playful, confused, spontaneous. In other words, to experience the parts of childhood that never fully happened. If this story resonates with you, you might recognize some of these patterns in your own life. Maybe you're the one people rely on, the one who rarely asks for help, the one who learned early how to carry emotional weight. If so, I want you to hear this clearly. Your maturity was not a mistake. It was an adaptation. Your brain did exactly what it needed to do in order to navigate your environment. It learned quickly. It became strong. It became aware. But strength doesn't have to mean constant responsibility. You're allowed to grow in new directions now. You're allowed to build a life where care flows both ways. And perhaps the most beautiful part of understanding your psychology is this. Once you see the pattern, you're no longer trapped inside it unconsciously. You can start choosing differently. You can begin giving yourself the patience, gentleness, and curiosity that every child deserves, even if that child happens to live inside an adult body now. So, I'm curious about something. When you look back at your younger self, do you feel like you had to grow up faster than others around you? And if so, what parts of yourself are you rediscovering today? Share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes the most powerful realization is discovering that you're not the only one with this story. And if this conversation helped you understand your own mind a little better, stick around. There are many hidden patterns inside our psychology. And the more we explore them, the more freedom we gain to become the person we were always meant to be.